Have you ever sat in the food court at the mall and watched all of the couples walk by and think to yourself, why on earth is she with him? My sister and I used to sit in the mall and we would play this game. We'd watch all these little odd couples walk by, and then we would just kind of blurt out one little word on why we thought they were together. You know, things like, prearranged. Tequila. Oh, pregnant. Vegas. And it seemed like no matter how long we sat there in the mall and how many hundreds of couples we would see walk by, we would always leave and we'd be so disheartened at the fact that no matter how many odd couples we saw, the oddest couples were within our own family. If you would look up the little phrase, odd couple, in the dictionary, I am sure right by that definition, you would see a little picture of my mother and my stepfather. Now, they were odd in quite a number of ways. One was just their physical appearance. My mother is 5'2", 200 pounds. My dad is 5'5", or my stepdad was 5'5", and about 100 pounds. So every time they hugged, it kind of looked like a grizzly bear devouring a cheese stick. And then the other reason that they were a little odd couple was the fact that when my mom was looking for a man to be her second, third, and fourth husband, I think she was a little confused. I think she had the idea that she was buying a home instead of looking for a husband. Now, instead of buying that little quaint little place down by the river that she just couldn't live without, she decided to go for the old rustic fixer-upper. And my stepfather was definitely a fixer-upper. He was an alcoholic, but my mother thought she could fix that. Now, when I say alcoholic, I don't mean he's the type of alcoholic that would drink, 1, 2, or 3 six-packs a night. Now, he was the type of alcoholic that would drink 1, 2, or 3 six-packs a night, followed by a bottle of vodka, followed by a bottle of cologne, and he would chase that all down with a bottle of rubbing alcohol. That's the type of alcoholic he was. And my mother thought she could fix him. Now, a lot of times I would always hear her saying things like, I wish that you would just have an affair with a woman instead of the bottle. At least with a woman I could beat the out of her. And that may or may not be true. I do remember one night my mother came home from work, and my stepfather was not anywhere he was supposed to be. She looked out in the kitchen. He was not out in the kitchen doing the dishes. She looked out in the garage. He was not out in the garage working on the car. She looked through the entire house, could not find him anywhere. So she walks down the hallway to the bedroom, and she turns the knob, and the door was locked. And then she did what every mother usually always does. She puts her ear up to the door to listen. And inside she could hear my stepfather talking, and he was saying things like, I just love you. You're so much nicer than my wife. You just lay there and be quiet. You don't yell at me like she does. I wish I could marry you. And that's all my mother had to hear. She started barreling her 200-pound frame down the hallway like a pinball in a pinball machine banging against the walls. She was going down to the kitchen. She gets into the kitchen. She digs through the cupboards. She finds the biggest cast-iron skillet that she could find. She goes barreling back down that hallway with her skillet, and she doesn't even bother to stop and try to unlock that door. She just busts the door down. She looks into the bedroom, and there sits my stepfather, stark naked, in the middle of the bed, surrounded by enough bottles of booze to start his own liquor store. He jumps up. He's looking a little scared. And then my mother starts in. Where is she? I said, where's who? Where's that bimbo I heard you talking to? Then he starts to laugh. Now, if there is one thing I have learned in all the years I have been alive, that is, when my mother is upset, you never, ever, under any circumstance, laugh at her. because that just makes her a little more psst, if you know what I mean. So she's screaming, "Where is she?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Where is she?" And he says, "What do you think you heard?" She said, "I heard you talking to a woman in here." He said, "I wasn't talking to a woman. I was talking to the booze." My mother looked at him and she said, "How dumb do you think I look?" That pregnant pause was all it took for Mother to swing that cast iron skillet as hard as she could. She cracked him in the back of the head, knocked him out cold. The next morning when he came to, everything was fine. And that's the way it was my entire childhood growing up. They would fight, they would make up. They would get married, they would get divorced. They would get remarried, they would get divorced. They would get remarried. It worked that way my entire childhood. Now, if my mother was up here telling this story, she would say that the odd couple in our family was me and my stepfather because we never got along. And the truth is, we did get along. Now, I know a lot of people who grow up with an alcoholic in the family. It's usually a traumatic experience. I kind of liked it because no matter what kind of mischief I got into, I could always blame it on him. Because he wouldn't remember if he did it or not. I remember one time we had what was called the firecracker incident in our home. My mother and stepfather went on a vacation, but before they left, they made a point to tell me, "We've got 100 firecrackers inside that closet, and don't get into those because we know exactly how many is there, and we're going to count them when we get home." Well, you don't tell a kid not to get into a bunch of firecrackers when his parents are not home. So as soon as they left, of course I went in. I found the biggest one I could find, took it out of the package and repackaged it back up. Looking for matches all over the house, could not find a match in that entire house. But we had a gas stove. So I counted how many steps it was from the stove to the front door. And I lit the firecracker, and I opened the front door. And so I started making my little trek from the stove to the front door, and just as I got to the front door to throw the firecracker outside, that firecracker flew out of my hand, flew back into the kitchen, all the way around the table, landed on every single cushion, burning a hole in them, and came down to a big fiery mess on the kitchen floor. So doing what any kid would do, I went back into the kitchen, I flipped all the cushions over. I took the rug, I just kind of put it over the big burn mark on the floor. Went out back, hid the firecracker in the trash can. About a week later, I'm coming home from school. I walk into the house and I hear my mother yelling at my stepfather. "How did you burn a hole in every single one of these seat cushions?" He says, "I didn't do it." She says, "Yes, you did." He said, "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't." "How dumb do you think I look?" That pregnant pause was all it took for her to grab one of the pillow cushions, smack him across the face with it. She then dropped the cushion on the ground, and as she bent down to pick up the cushion, she accidentally lifted up the edge of the rug, which revealed a big giant burn mark there on the floor. And that's when she looked at me. Now, why is it that parents always know what's happening even when they're not in the room? She got the hint and the idea of what might have happened with that big burn mark on the floor. And she said, "What do you suppose happened here? What is that?" I said, "It's a burn mark." She says, "Yeah, what do you suppose made that kind of a burn mark?" I'm like, "Well, a cigar?" She goes, "I bet you lit a firecracker and it burned a hole in the floor." I said, "No, I didn't." She said, "Yes, you did." I said, "No, I didn't." She said, "Yes, you did." I said, "I certainly did not." And then she said, "How dumb do you think I look?" You would think in 43 years, my stepfather and I would have come up with a suitable answer to that question.